It's the Security Weekly News, and it's episode 416. I'm Doug White, and it is the week of 22 September 2024. We've got C3pbot, Kaspersky, Octo2 Electric Boogaloo, Honkai, Star Rail, ServiceNow, LinkedIn, IoT and IIoT, Josh Marpet, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365.25 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/threatlocker. In 2024, the future of identity, security, and digital transformation converges at Octane, hosted by Octo. On October 15th through 17th, join the brightest minds in tech and business in Las Vegas or online as they explore groundbreaking innovations and unveil the latest Octo solutions to keep your organization secure, connected, and ahead of the curve. Whether you're a developer, an IT or security leader, or a visionary, Octane is your gateway to transforming tomorrow, today. Security Weekly listeners only need to pay $100 for your full conference pass for Octane by using the discount code OKTNSC24 at securityweekly.com/Octane2024. And you can stream the event live on octa.com/Octane. All right. From exile on the island of Elba, we're back, and it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and welcome to the show. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your favorite platform, or I will have to try the serum on myself. Yeah. All right. Sorry, a little disjointed this week. Maybe I did try the serum on myself, and I think it was called bourbon. But, all right. Kaspersky. Yeah, okay, you're going to start with Kaspersky. I never trusted Kaspersky. Come on. Antivirus is this weird thing that we probably trust too much just because it says antivirus. It's like, I need it, and I'm going to install this thing on my machine that can basically do anything, has full admin privilege, who knows what it can do. Well, you remember when 4 out of 5 doctors recommended Lucky Strikes for that soothing menthol smoke in your lungs kind of thing? That's a real ad, right? They'd go pay these doctors, and the doctors would go, "Hey, yeah, sure. I don't know what's in them, but I can't quit smoking them," kind of thing. Yeah, I remember my doctor telling I was sitting there with an unfiltered cigarette, and he had an unfiltered cigarette, and him going, "Yeah, you need to quit smoking," and I was like, "Oh, I know, man." But yeah, like that. Cynical dystopian me always thought, who benefits the most from malware? Is it Satan or antivirus companies? We need those sales to rise in the third quarter. Hey, there's a new virus called Machiavelli 2024. You're doomed. You better get our antivirus or you're screwed. Well, Kaspersky, a Russian company, that alone is enough to put me off it. I'm from the Cold War era. But Kaspersky suddenly deleted its anti-malware from customers' computers this week in the United States and replaced it with something called Ultra AV, an affiliate of Kaspersky. I'm like, you can do that? You can just delete what's on my machine and put something else on there without me even knowing about it? Okay, so your anti-malware product can delete itself and install something else without my approval or even notification. Yeah, that can't be good. Well, now back in June, Kaspersky was added to the Entity List. I love that, which is a catalog of people, companies in the U.S. that are deemed a national security threat by the government. We're all probably on that list. If you've ever been on Pulse Security Weekly, you probably are. But Kaspersky will be banned from sale in the United States starting on the 29th. Yeah, that always works so well. But Kaspersky did email their customers and advise them that they would be shutting down and laying off workers in the United States due to this heinous act from the U.S. government, blah, 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 and that Ultra AV would be available. But they did not tell anyone that the product would suddenly be installed on their systems without their knowledge. Some people also got Ultra VPN installed if they had Kaspersky VPN as a subscription. Yeah, it makes me want to go out and sort of delete all my antivirus stuff and salt the earth, and just burn this computer down and maybe just, I don't know. But hey, this is fun stuff. But it might be a good time for you to review your endpoint protection and see what can they do to us? How can they do it? How suddenly can they do it? And what if they decided to do it, say, this afternoon? And what would that do to us? So it definitely made me think. And I certainly would not install Kaspersky, but we all have something, and who knows what they can do. Octo Android is a malware, and it has a new version out called Octo2 that is spreading across Europe. And it's pretending to be NordVPN, Google Chrome, and another app named Europe Enterprise. So this is typical stuff where they put up fake domains and fake sites and fake links to fake EXEs, and you download them and install them. Now, Threat Fabric's been tracking these guys for a while, and they reported on this, and they said that the new version has I love how, it all starts to sound like marketing now. The new version has operational stability, more advanced anti-analysis and anti-detection mechanisms, and a domain generation algorithm for better command and control implementation, 10% better than before. How much would you pay? And it is, of course, malware as a service product. But Octo is an Android-based banking Trojan that's based on an old one called Exobot Trojan from back in 2016. And the Exobot source code got leaked in 2018, and that led to a whole bunch of forking. And Octo was leaked this year, which resulted in a new bunch of forking. And so, it's forking A, boys. But I mean, it was all over the place. And the typical approach is, of course, they use something popular that you feel like you need, like Google Chrome or whatever. But the current distribution is limited to third-party stores for Android. Now, my take on this article was, if you got people in your enterprise upload or downloading third-party applications from third-party stores, you've already got big problems. So don't let them do that. Tell them not to do that. And if you're doing this on a personal level, well, good luck to you, because who knows if you have antivirus on your device, maybe it's been replaced with something else. Speaking of malware on devices, a new ransomware uses an executable for Honkai Star Rail to launch itself. Honkai apparently is a popular video game that I was not familiar with, and I don't like to play video games on a phone anyway, but if you do, you may know what it is. The ransomware is called Cransum, or Cransum, I don't know, it starts with a K, and it was discovered by Any.Run. What was interesting about it was how it gets installed. Now, unlike, say, Octo, where it relies on a user to click on a link, this thing uses side-loading DLLs. And what happens is, so when you execute the totally 100% legitimate game exe file called starrail.exe, it side-loads the ransomware with a DLL. So the game itself is fine, but the side-loaded DLL is called starrailbase.dll, and this gets loaded with the game. So if it's on your device, when the game runs, it loads a DLL and you get ransomware. Now, it's not clear what this ransomware does. They basically said it puts up a ransom note that reflects you back to the original game company, so it's not clear if this is like an attack on them or what. Now, you may say, I don't play this game, but this technique means that it could be used in a lot of different scenarios. And if you are familiar with any of this kind of side-loading stuff, QuackBot was side-loaded with the Win7 calculator app back in 2022. 2023, this thing called 3CX, which is a legitimate business communication software, did the very same thing. So the game executable has a legitimate certificate, but it loads a DLL if it's there, and then you have a problem. So be careful what you download and what you let people download on their enterprise equipment, because this stuff could be used in many more nefarious ways than just ransomwaring someone's device. Well, speaking of things that are in your enterprise that you should be scared of, all those thousands of IoT and IIoT devices you have on your site, including that new cat toy that you can control with your phone that somebody brought in from home. Yeah, all that stuff. that little tank that drives around the office and puts red dots on people. Yeah, those things, along with, of course, all your valve controllers and HVAC and everything else. Well, CERT Coordination Center warned of a 9.5 vulnerability and a 9.8 vulnerability that was in all publicly available examples of the Microchip Advanced Software Framework code base. Now, if you don't know what that is, you're probably not a chip developer. But if you're a chip developer, that code base is a free open source library from Microchip ASP, which is used in tons of stuff for evaluation, prototyping, design, and production of microcontrollers. And again, this is more supply chain stuff because you probably don't see that unless you're a chip developer. And those microcontrollers ultimately end up in IoT devices. The vulnerability would mean that somebody could allow remote code execution on that device, which means they're in your network, they're connected to your network, and so forth. CERT said a specially crafted DHCP request. Now, you probably don't filter DHCP internally, but that specially crafted DHCP request can cause a stack-based overflow, which allows the remote code execution. Now, this is another case of a library being used all over the place without really any of us knowing about it, and then that supply chain issue trickling down to the local threat. That other flaw is in MediaTek Wi-Fi chipsets. The 9.8 one was in MediaTek Wi-Fi, which was found by SonicWall Capture Labs. And guess what? Those are found in all kinds of devices that you may have internal, like Ubiquiti devices, Xiaomi, and Netgear devices, among who knows how many others. The recommendation from CERT was to get an accurate inventory of IoT in your networks using some kind of asset discovery tool. Not that you've never heard us say that before. And the other big recommendation, put this crap on a private VLAN. Not that you've ever heard us say that before either. But you really should not be allowing these toys and even more serious devices like IoT devices in your public networks. Don't trust them. You don't know what's inside those things. If you don't believe me, refer to the pager thing from last week. Yeah. ServiceNow is an enterprise cloud vendor, and 616 of their customers have been affected by some problems and been out of service for a while. When your business depends on that cloud provider to do business, being told, we care about you and we're working hard to fix the problem as soon as possible. Well, we've all, put those messages out too. But remember listening to that recorded music with the, we care about you. You're a valuable customer embedded for 20 straight hours in Heathrow Airport trying to find a new United flight? Yeah, like that one. I remember sitting there with my phone, just listening to, I won't do the music because then we'll get censored, but, and then, every 20 seconds or so, it breaks in and goes, we value your business. And, and you're like, yeah, you've been valuing it for 20 hours now, and I still don't have a flight. Anyway, ServiceNow's issue is a management, instrumentational, and discovery server, which is a Java app that is placed on local client servers inside of your firewall and integrates apps into the platform. So that's the whole problem started when a root G2 SSL cert expired. Well, you know what? That'll do it. And I just put this story up because it's always a good time to sit down and think about reviewing your SLAs with your critical infrastructure. So this is obviously shut your business down if you're stuck with this. And what does your SLA say? Now, the one with the airline says, not only do we not have to accommodate you, we get to spit in your mouth if you complain. But your SLA with your critical infrastructure provider may well, have some kind of conditions about how long can you be down before they do something, or it may not. But it's really critical that you also identify your critical infrastructure. You really do need to know what you have, and you also need to know how long it can be down and how long you'll be listening to that message saying we care about your business. Yeah, but you don't have any choices. So there, don't you love monopolies? Not that ServiceNow is a monopoly. I was thinking more about other providers like my cable company and things like that. Cyber insurance, a complex bargain to say the least. I don't want to bash cyber insurance, and it is kind of a necessity, but it's also really complicated, and it's gotten a lot worse in the last couple of years. A lot of policies that were written early on, and then those were changed, and then today, well, it's very complex. Cyber insurers for a long time were working without an actuarial net. in the early going, and a rising attack surface and rising payouts has meant that, well, you know how that giant glossy casino didn't get built by losing bets? Yeah, that's how insurance works too, right? Risk pools. Just like your car insurance, your health insurance, and everything else, everybody pays in, and your rate is determined by how much they have to pay out. So, if everybody's buying some kind of weird travel insurance that they never pay out, they make a lot of money. But when you don't know the risks, like with cyber, and the threats keep rising and you don't understand them and the payouts keep going up, but you don't really know, well, don't be shocked when either your policy doesn't cover enough or it costs a lot more than you expected and they cancel it at the end of the year. Policies have a lot of exclusions, and a really good example was the CrowdStrike outage back in July. Crazy losses, and people started calling their insurers and found out it was not covered due to vendor error, not a cyber attack. It's like when they tell you that your car being, disappearing in a tornado was an act of God. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. What if you don't believe in okay, well, we won't get off on that tangent. But in general, I am a fan of underwriting because it does force people to behave better. If you can't get insurance for your movie, the movie never gets made. So you probably have to adopt some safety practices and just quit saying things like, so the gun went off and a couple of people died. They weren't like A-listers. You have to start behaving a little better. And the same has happened with cyber because we've seen insurers. I worked for an insurance company and we saw them going out to these people and saying, if you want us to keep covering you, you're going to have to, disable Telnet with anonymous login kind of stuff. And they did. Before that, they were going, why bother? We'll fix it when we need to. But you want insurance, you get pen tested. You want life insurance, you get a physical. Just don't get those two confused, or Larry Pesci may be coming over to do your physical and that kind of stuff. But the point is, from this article, please review and evaluate your coverage with your legal team, because you really don't want to be that person who needs coverage after something's already happened. Like, I need surgery, but I didn't pay for the insurance. Yeah, that kind of thing. Exactly. LinkedIn. Sign up and allow Chinese agents to offer you jobs or North Koreans to try to get you to hire them on a daily basis. It can be fun and entertaining. Well, now a new privacy set. I really got offended at LinkedIn at this. A new privacy setting suddenly popped up on LinkedIn, which lets you know they were doing it already, right? So by default now, LinkedIn allowed itself to use information shared on the service to train its AI. So unless you toggle this setting to off, well, everything on LinkedIn, posts, articles, videos, resumes, anything you've ever put on LinkedIn, it's all being used to train their AI by their admission. Now, here's the bad news. They already scraped it all. So they did not let you know about this, and they still haven't advised anybody about it. They just made this little button appear deep, deep down in all the submenus that you can opt out. But unfortunately, if you opt out today, everything that was already there has already been scraped into their AI training module and is being used without you ever having any input to that whole process. Now, if you want to get rid of it now, which I went and did immediately, click your headshot, open settings, select data privacy, and turn off the option called data for generative AI improvement. I love how they call it improvement. But it's probably too late. And in fact, I know it's too late because if you read the article, you will see they say it is not retroactive. You cannot cause them to go in and remove all your stuff that they've already added. So if you had anything on LinkedIn, it's already in there, probably being used and handed off to North Korean agents. Thanks, LinkedIn. Really good. Could we get some privacy laws in the US, please? Like a few, even just ones that say you can't use my stuff without my permission. You copy the GDPR, please. I know you're not going to, but I really wish you would. You might want to include this in your latest company audit, though, and make sure you know what your employees have shared on LinkedIn that is now being in their AI, that who knows what's going to be done with it. Right. Who knows? But now, I didn't know who was going to be on the show today. I presumed it was going to be somebody we knew. I then was told it could be Carrot Top. That was what I was hearing this morning. But then I was like, Carrot Top? I thought he was dead. But then this bald guy showed up. And of course, we know who our favorite bald guy is. It is Josh Marpet, who is back with us. Hi, Josh. It's okay. For a little while there, I thought it was going to be really weird.
And I got to tell you, your article about cyber insurance was fascinating. I've been dealing with that for years now. And there's so many aspects to it. Did like the Lloyd's of London cyber warfare? Any Lloyd's of London thing that has anything to claim that has anything to do with cyber warfare or could be termed as a nation state attack is automatically denied. Like there's so much going on, it's crazy. But I actually wanted to talk about more nation state stuff.
We should have a show. We should have a show and just talk about cyber insurance because I think you and I can talk about that for a long time.
We can talk about that for hours. Yeah, you want to do it in a few weeks?
Really
we'll do
could.
It. That's no problem. But I want to talk about another nation state issue, which is Iran. Now, as you may know, Iran has a little issue with terrorism. They fund most of it. But what they do have is they have a nation state Ministry of Intelligence and Security that breaks in for all the Iranian hackers. What? Apparently, Iran has put together a bevy of hackers and cyber criminals, but under nation state cover, and they have an entire department that all they do is break in and get access for the rest of them. So what you're saying is you've actually gotten now a compartmentalized hacking system. So it's interesting. I used to work at White Hat Security many years ago, and their whole thing was when they did a pen test, they trained one person to understand SQL injection, and they trained one person to understand cross-site scripting. And so they'd pass all the possibilities that got through the engine, and they'd say, hey, what's this? The SQL that's a SQL injection. Oh, the cross-site scripting would be the other person. So they compartmentalized the ideas, the pieces of pen testing and the pieces of understanding the hacks. Well, so what Iran has done is done the same thing in a sort of way. They've got a group that all they do is break in and drop in effectively a command and control nodule into your infrastructure. And then they have other groups that come in and take advantage of that. They are experts and specialists in post-exploitation, in land and expand pivoting, et cetera. So it's interesting that they've actually done a nation state compartmentalization of their cyber criminal, cyber espionage network. I find that absolutely fascinating. The other piece in the technical aspect is that the nodule that they drop in, the command and control I don't know what to call it, module, chunk of code, whatever, is completely passive. It does not call back home. It doesn't do a call out to some random domain like a lot of ransomware things do. You know, they have those generators that generate weird domain names, and they call it like on Wednesday of the 7th month, call this domain or whatever. They literally, unless somebody reaches into it, it is not, you won't even see it, which means you have to start examining your inbound traffic to find these inbound calls to see whether this thing wakes up and goes, hi, I'm here. Okay, what do you want me to do? Because otherwise you're going to have a real hard time finding it. They're leveraging Windows API calls and some undocumented tools of http.sys. So there's and Mandiant with Google Cloud were the ones that found this. They did a great job finding this. This is really cool. If you hear a UNC 1860, that's the name of the nation state group. And it's incredibly different from your normal CNC, your C2 command and control infrastructure being passive. So what we've got is we've got a nation state that is not following sort of, what's the right word, traditional paths, I guess. It is not following the way that things have been done in ransomware and hacking for years past. It is following a whole new playbook, You've got a group that is absolutely dedicated to just cracking open your defenses just enough to slip a single piece of code in. And then once they do that, they go away. And you don't see anything. There's no attack. There's no exfiltration. There's no nothing. Then sometime later, hours, days, weeks, months later in some cases, somebody else shows up, calls out to that listener, and walks in the door, because the door's already been opened for them or unlocked for them, whatever analogy you want to use. And it starts attacking, starts pivoting, starts exfiltrating data, wiping ransomware, whatever. But it's not what you normally expect is there's an attack, then there's a ransomware drop, or phishing, ransomware drop, whatever, but there's a pattern. This pattern is now being broken. So you have to be very, very careful, all right? Look for anomalies that are smaller than you would expect. Look for anomalies with some weird system calls that are undocumented. How do you even see them if they're undocumented? Oh my God, this is crazy. And look for things that are going on that is unusual. Again, anomalies. Be aware that nation-state attacker that Iran as a nation-state attacker is attacking all kinds of companies, not just nation state, American or Israeli or whatever intelligence services. They're attacking anybody that could potentially be providing support, weapons, weapon systems, intelligence, components, whatever, to Israel, Ukraine, or even just the US. And anybody that is a subcontractor to them, and a subcontractor to them, and a subcontractor to them. And as I've been part of CMMC, I will tell you that's a majority of the companies, or a significant chunk of the entire roster of companies in the US. So if you have a company, be careful. All right, Doug, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Josh. Even if you don't have a company, be careful. But I mean, this is that kind of subtle targeting is stuff I've talked about for a long, long time. And I remember to demonstrate, this is White Hat, I was demonstrating to an organization. I had actually managed to get some of their users to click on something, and it installed daemons on their local machines that had weird names that, unless you really explored it, you would have no idea what it was, but it looked like something you shouldn't mess with because it had the word kernel in it. And I was just trying to show them, I put these in here. It was not a huge effort on my part to put these in here. I did it. But all right. Thanks, Josh. And finally, Turing tests. You gotta love Turing tests. Turing tests is a test based on a 19th century parlor game called the Imitation Game, where a bunch of people in corsets and top hats sat around tittering, probably with a lot of double entendres and stuff. But it was an interesting idea, and it was originally proposed by Alan Turing, who was one of the most brilliant people who ever lived. Really, I mean, he's one of my heroes. I mean, that guy was in the 1930s was writing code for theoretical computers. I mean, the computer didn't exist. He just invented a theoretical computer and was writing theoretical code for it. He just wrote these brilliant papers. I mean, just blew me away. And of course, he later got persecuted to death for being gay, but the good old days. But anyway, the Turing test is supposed to decide if something is intelligent or not by seeing if the code can fool a judge who is talking with a group of people. And this was how this imitation game worked. One person sat behind a screen and the other people said things, and they were trying to, it was kind of like what's my line kind of game. And basically the judge interacts with the people via text, so this was originally Turing tests were done by typing on a keyboard. And today they put them in text-oriented type environments. Well, UC San Diego did a test on a 2-player group that used 500 participants along with GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. So this is the chat GPT stuff. And they also added as what they called a control, ELIZA. And if you've ever worked on mainframes or old systems, you probably know what ELIZA is. It was a 1970s era chat bot that was pretty much widely available, and almost everybody had it installed for fun and games. Now, ELIZA wasn't very smart, but it was clever. I had one called Whimsy, too, that was quite interesting. And allegedly, Whimsy almost passed a Turing test way back in like the 1980s because it was just so obtuse that people were like, that's so weird, it's got to be human. Or is it Doug? It might be Doug. But regardless, I did not write Whimsy. I'm not taking credit for it, but it was one that we found. GPT-4 actually succeeded in 54% of the cases. And the technical criteria for Turing tests was that you had to win 30% of the time. More stringent rules say 50% of the time. But regardless of that, GPT-4 actually did win 54% of the cases, which meets the threshold. ELIZA only won 22%. And here it is. The humans in the text, 67% of the time. So GPT-4 is getting in the ballpark of the humans. So we're probably all doomed. Pretty soon, AI bots will be calling us 24/7 to try to, and using predictors from our LinkedIn accounts to try to convince us to buy those Franklin Mint coins. And, and Terminators who are fluent in over 6 million forms of communication will probably be just around the bend. So, we're doomed. That's the news. Thank you, Josh. And I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.